I had a new top speed today,
What's
103
that?
kilometers an hour.
Ooh, that's faster than me, man. I've done 97,
103.5.
so good
97?
job.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my previous
Did
one
you
was
do it on
100.
like the top slope, like the tallest gondola to
Yeah,
the
the tall black one.
yeah,
Like just
yeah.
put them straight, go
Like
down.
floor it, yeah, send it.
Uh-huh.
First slope of the day, so it's still clean, right?
Yeah, exactly. It was
Yeah.
super clean today, and I had freshly waxed skis, and they were just cut, so super
Nice.
sharp. Yeah.
How are the vibes in Bansko in the winter versus the summer? I'm curious.
I'm actually loving it right now. There's a nice community here. I think when we were here, Ben, there was a bit of a smaller group. Now there's also more people coming and going. But we have some nice people here on Saturdays. We go all together on the slopes. Last week, Saturday, we had actually an amazing day. The weekends are awesome. And then throughout the week, everyone is locked in as well. So that's good. And I
Yeah,
created
I'm
this.
jealous.
I vibe coded this app with 2 prompts in Claude. I said, "Hey Claude, we want a conversation card. We want a conversation card game for in the ski lift. Create 3 different topics that we can pick from for conversation cards." And it just one-shotted it. Perfect. Works perfectly, just the same as all those conversation cards that you see that you can buy for whatever. I've been playing that now on the slopes. It's actually good fun. Hello everyone. Welcome to the 3rd episode of the God Mode Pod. We are 3 AI techies that are all into AI from different backgrounds. Me, Rick, background in crypto startups, project management. Then we have Luca, serial entrepreneur, and we have Ben, who is running a bunch of different vibe-coded startups, SaaS products. I wouldn't really call it vibe-coded. They're high quality and they're great. Welcome, guys. We have a full docket again. There is quite a lot that happened this week, but we want to dive a bit deeper on some specific topics. And I think it's going to be mainly Anthropic, Claude today versus OpenAI, and some side stories, some segues here and there. Yesterday, ChatGPT 5.4. Is that the one that dropped? That's something we're definitely going to discuss. I didn't have a chance to use it yet. But yeah, let's dive straight in. I'll get the docket, which our producer Nick created. Nick is on fire. He's been doing such a good job. But yeah, topic number 1. Every time Anthropic draws a line, OpenAI picks up the contract. And I think this is the main story of the past week. This week we had the American Department of War going after Anthropic because Anthropic didn't want the Department of War to use their AI for 2 specific reasons or 2 specific use cases, which were mass surveillance, as well as, I think, military operations. And Anthropic was pushing back on these. And then they had to come together, discuss, and it turned out that the government didn't go in to see with Anthropic. And not only did they not want to work with them anymore, they also said all the other government contractors cannot use Anthropic. And that was a big bomb that got dropped because that means that there's a lot of government contractors. And if they cannot really use Anthropic, that means it's basically a big block on your best AI producer, which surprised me. But then a little bit later, OpenAI runs away with the deal with the government contract. So, guys, what are we thinking here? This is not the first time that Anthropic not really drops a ball, but does something, and then OpenAI runs away with it. Ben, do you have any thoughts on this government combination?
Also, just to add to the kind of the drama of this story, what I read, I think it was like a New York Times article or Washington Post, was that basically some leader in the Department of War set a deadline of basically 5 p.m. last week to make a decision on whether or not Anthropic would be awarded this contract. They had a bunch of questions to Anthropic, and Dario was apparently in meetings and wasn't able to like address those concerns. And then by 5:15 p.m., I guess the government official like went over to OpenAI, and then by 11 p.m. that night, Sam Altman had kind of tweeted saying we've struck up a deal, right? So it really was kind of this weird, I guess, like power tripping moment where the government official said, "Hey, you guys missed the deadline. We're going with the other people," and they had been working on the side with this project, which is kind of interesting. Yeah, I don't know,
Really?
like Anthropic. Yeah, that's what I could drop it in like the show notes and we could take a look after. But yeah, that's what I read, that they were kind of working on this as like a backup plan in case Anthropic fell through, and then they did. They missed the deadline basically. Yeah. I don't know. That was a pretty crazy side note. But other than that, I mean, I think this is like pretty consistent with like how Anthropic seems to work, where they have the constitution for their models. They have more of a, I'd say, backbone for what is acceptable and what's not. Whereas OpenAI and Sam Altman is like fully going capitalist on this, saying like, let's do whatever we can to increase market share, whether it be in the enterprise sector, the governmental sector, the B2C sector. Yeah. And then Sam just pounced on this thing. What I did see was that for a decent amount of time, Claude was the #1 app in the App Store. And I think downloads or either downloads of Claude or deletions of ChatGPT were down by like 250%, something like that, right? So there was a crazy swing where a lot of people, and even last week, I've had like 3 or 4 friends who've asked me like, hey, what do you think of Claude? Like, have you made the move over? So it really does feel like it's like this like ChatGPT is getting canceled, at least by the B2C market.
Yeah, I didn't know it was about like missing a deadline. I really thought it was like Dario keeping its stance of I don't want you to use our technology for mass surveillance, which is for the people, as well as then the military operations, and that it was that they didn't really want to give in. But then that raises a question to me. They could have negotiated maybe the terms or the deals, and I find it a very, very strong reaction of the government to say, okay, guys, so we will not use you. We will use your competitor, but also all our contractors cannot use this technology, which is, yeah, it's sort of like suicide or like killing a company if that doesn't really, like, if that really gets pulled through. But then on the other side, like, if you know who is backing Anthropic, there's like Amazon and Nvidia and so many other big companies that they will come back to this, right? They will get back to maybe a baseline. It's impossible that everyone who has to work with the government cannot use Anthropic. Luca, what do you think about this warfare?
I think you guys
Sorry,
covered quite a few. Go
just
for it
quickly on
before
this.
I go on this.
Yeah, so I just wanted to make sure I wasn't speaking out of line. So this is what happened, right? On February 24th, 2 weeks ago, Secretary Pete Hegseth gave Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei a deadline, relent by 5:01 p.m. And then on Friday, February 27th, they would allow unrestricted use of Claude for all legal purposes. So basically, there was like a hard deadline. They didn't meet that deadline, and then a few hours later was when Emil Michael put out kind of this like agreement and press release saying that they had struck up a deal with OpenAI. So pretty wild.
Yeah, I from what I gather as well, they were not even excluding all use cases for using Anthropic with regards to security and this sort of thing. They were just very specific about not wanting autonomous robots. Inside of the contracts, they tried to kind of to accommodate for that and then leave a little backdoor, which was in the case of, let's say, they actually need to use it for autonomous robots. They want to keep that clause in. What I'm actually curious about is what are the factors that are making Anthropic slightly better for these use cases, and kind of like how much of an edge that actually is today. And as well, what I was thinking about is it mostly autonomous robots or is it also surveillance? So I think that's going to be a big part of what people are going to start thinking about when you start thinking about big government agencies having partnerships so close like that with OpenAI. Maybe people coming from the Web3 space will immediately understand the ideas of sovereignty and this sort of thing. And I think that's something that needs to be championed in the AI space. I think Anthropic is being really brave by doing it in this way. But yeah, I think it's a very exciting thing to watch, to see how the consumer behaves as well with this coming up.
Yeah, the consumer question is a good one indeed. Like OpenAI goes running away with this new contract now. It's a $200 million a year contract. But then thinking about what the potential backslash could be, Anthropic like keeps its foot strong and says, no, we don't want you to use our technology for mass surveillance and for warfare. And then OpenAI runs away with the contract, but there's a lot of consumers that actually use those apps that might like the philosophy of Anthropic more, and they indeed don't want to be surveilled on, or they don't like mass surveillance. And now they're going to link the name OpenAI with mass surveillance potentially. And that could be a PR issue as well. And thinking about it, then if you think about it that way, how many people need to cancel their subscription to lose 200 million in revenue for OpenAI? That's 1 million people on a yearly basis. So how many users do they have now? Probably more than 1 billion. So that's only a small percentage of people that just got to cancel ChatGPT to make this new government contract, which seems like a good deal, actually a loss for OpenAI. That's an interesting way to look at it as well. I'm wondering what would be what actually is the impact on how people see OpenAI now for taking this when Anthropic just says no, and literally the same day OpenAI jumps on it.
Yeah, I don't know. It should be interesting. It feels like it's almost like Apple versus Google, where Google is like the OpenAI in this case, and they're kind of like trying to serve the masses, whereas Anthropic, Apple, they're really focused on privacy, focused on just building really great products that work really well, but also having a backbone and maybe turning away deals if it doesn't set into their subset of like what they want to work on.
But is it also maybe a bit kind of naive to think that that's how you can that's a working strategy, in the sense that like is it kind of like if we used nuclear technology as an example, and you were a scientist who was working on nuclear technology to create energy for people, that's a very noble purpose, and you never wanted to work on the purpose of it being used for as a bomb, but indirectly your work is still furthering the cause of creating the nuclear bombs. In one case, like you can say from a moral standpoint, I never touched the weapon side of things, so I never kind of had my finger on the trigger, but indirectly, are you still morally responsible? That's another question too, that I would say you can argue that even if you are not supporting autonomous weapons, by working on AI and furthering and advancing AI in general, you are still contributing to it in maybe less or just amount or more or just the same as those who are working directly on those weapons.
It's very funny that you mentioned, or not funny. It's interesting that you mentioned the atomic bomb. Because apparently I've heard that one of Dario's favorite books is The Making of the Atomic Bomb. And then he was asked in one of the interviews about what should we do, or what should a country do when an AI, or when there's this decision to use a killing machine or to use a nuclear bomb. And then he said literally, yeah, don't make they should call me. So there's like the thought of like, okay, is he putting himself above a country, above governments, and does he want to be the decision maker on who and when can use a bomb? And that's a dangerous place to be in as well, right? So then it's a double-edged sword here, and I don't really know like how to look at it.
For sure, he's not elected to take that decision, right? He's he got to that position through his own ingenuity. But I think when you are obviously talking about leaders of countries, they are representing people. But yeah, that's an interesting angle actually. Is by this being the decider of who gets to use it and how, is he inadvertently being that what he is seeking to destroy?
The question here is, what's the philosophy that Anthropic makes their decisions from, and what's the philosophy that OpenAI makes its decisions from? And I think they're both totally different. And if we look at it then from the Anthropic side, the EA, or effective altruism, it's just fully tied in the organization of Anthropic. And I'm wondering, is this the way that they actually make their decisions, or is there any other values that they build upon? But if we look at the background of Anthropic, the founders, Dario and Daniela Amodei, came up through EA intellectual tradition. It shaped their entire worldview. The money, open philanthropy, EA's biggest philanthropic organization, was a major early Anthropic funder. The family tie, Daniela's husband, Holden Karnofsky, co-founded Open Philanthropy. He joined Anthropic in January 2025. So this whole EA movement is throughout Anthropic, all the decision makers, the founders, everyone is involved, the investors, the key investors, the biggest shareholders. It's all effective altruism. And then you see Sam Altman say effective altruism is an incredibly flawed movement that shows very weird emergent behavior. Which I can also find myself in if we look back at the SBF. Like, he did great, but also he did some stuff which is not really legal and good, and burned a lot of people. So again, a hard one to, like, I understand both sides, but also it's a hard one to pick a side on this one. Ben, well, what's your thoughts on the effective altruism and the Anthropic mindset here or how this is tied to the whole organization?
I don't have too much. I don't think anybody really knows outside of the company. Like, we're kind of all speculating. I think we have another slide that like really goes into also the details of like all of the trees. Maybe here, this one. So this might be like a good segue into this and like kind of breaking it down even further in a different way. But you've got CEO Dario Amodei. His sister comes over, as well. Then you have someone else, Amanda Eskel, who she's also kind of part of EA and helping with like this constitution for Claude. And I didn't even know that Daniela is married to the founder of Open Philanthropy, right? Which is extremely tied to Anthropic. I think
and this guy, this founder of Open Philanthropy was Dario's roommate in college as well. Okay. And that's how he got linked with his sister.
Yeah. And then you've got Dustin Moskovitz, right? Who he was one of the founders of Facebook. So, I mean, I do think that this whole kind of concept of the Constitution really, like, which is my best understanding of how Anthropic and thinks about Claude, like, the Constitution is super tied to this EA movement, where you have something that's like a strict guideline of how the model should work, and the model shouldn't deviate from that. And that's very similar to how an EA person would maybe advocate for saving 10 lives. In if you could allocate a certain amount of money, like they would allocate it towards the cause that had the greatest impact on society. That's kind of how they look at philanthropy, right? And so then if we go back to this like Pentagon, contract thing, maybe within Anthropic, they are saying, well, what is going to be better for the greater good of society? Is it providing, our technology to the government, or is it actually relinquishing those those efforts, right? And then providing it to the people instead, which is kind of the route that they're going. So I don't know. I mean, I don't have too much more to say, but I think it's fascinating how tied they are. And the other aspect that probably not that many people just realize is like FTX would be wildly profitable. Like if those reserves that Sam Bankman-Fried had used, right, if they came to fruition, because he invested in Anthropic, but a number of other amazing investments that really would have paid off. He was like a great VC investor. We just didn't really notice. Yeah, you're muted, Rick.
Yeah, he invested 500 million. I think it was in probably their second round. So 500 million, which would be worth 30 billion right now. I think originally he bought like a 13.5% stake in equity. With dilution, that became an 8% stake now, which would be valued at a 30 billion valuation today. So from 500 million to 30 billion, and I think with that 30 billion, you could probably pay the whole FTX everything back 3 times or so. So it's really an unfortunate coincidence that this whole situation happened and that the bank run happened, and you still, you don't have to do illegal stuff and you shouldn't use user funds. But somehow this guy, he knew stuff, like I think he would be the most successful investor in history, maybe, if you see how fast he came up and his returns, what he would have made if he didn't made some small mistakes, which were kind of illegal. But yeah, the most EA aligned investment in history, Sam Bankman-Fried, funded by the most reckless person. Oh, yeah. Anyway, that's actually a good quote.
Yeah, I don't discount these are clever people. They're like effective altruism. I think there are some clever people who are come out of it. But I would just be wary, at least from where I stand, is when I see people who are using effective altruism as their main kind of campaign point, is I am always questioning what is their ultimate motive, because I think that their philosophy is a good one to follow, and it clearly has some good results. But then it always seems like the persons behind it are able to hide what their true intentions might be through that facade.
Great point indeed. Yeah, that's basically how SBF fell through as well. He was coming at it from the whole effective altruism standpoint, and that's what he was preaching. But then through that, he's talking and lobbying with governments to try to get him and FTX and his organization in the forefront, while not really allowing other organizations like Coinbase and like others, which are competitors of FTX. Anthropic funded in May 2021 the first 124 million round with indeed Dustin Moskovitz, Open Philanthropy. Those are the biggest funders. In April 2022, BF invests 500 million of FTX customer funds into Anthropic, gets 13.5% equity. Every major EA funder is now Anthropic. FTX collapses in November, which is 7 months after the funding of Anthropic. FTX collapses, frozen, the most EA-aligned investment in history, funded by large EA behavior in crypto. Then in January 2021, 3 years later, or 2.5 years later, Aronofsky joins Anthropic. EA's Money co-founder is now physically inside the building. And then in February, where we are now, February 2026, Anthropic blacklisted by the Pentagon for drawing EA-coded red lines. Anthropic hits the #1 app store the same week, valued at 380 billion. So actually, this is what you said earlier, Ben, as well. Anthropic killing this deal or not taking the government deal turned out to be a good PR for them, because they became the #1 and people are actually finally moving. We realized this about a year ago, that Claude is best for many cases. And I'm starting to see this on my feed as well now. People saying, I'm breaking up with ChatGPT. I have a new best friend now. It's Claude.
So this one's interesting. The subscription arbitrage era is basically over. First, it started with Anthropic, where they were blocking OAuth for OpenCode and OpenClaw, and basically any third-party tools. What that basically means is that you can't use your subscription with Claude to be able to use OpenClaw. Then after that, Google cut off their AI Ultra subscribers from being able to use OpenClaw. And then they also threatened Gmail and workspace access in the process. And lastly, OpenAI, like it's kind of up in the air with how they're going to respond, right? Because OpenAI is now, has Peter Steinberger working for them. So I think they've been a little bit more like liberal in their policy when it comes to using OpenClaw for your OpenAI subscription. But a lot of people do speculate that like basically the economics of being able to have these subscription for $20 a month just makes no sense if you're able to then tap in that OAuth token outside of just like their ecosystem, right? So another way to think about it, I always think of subscriptions as like a buffet, right? And if you go in and you can like eat a certain amount of food, basically buffets just calculate like how much is the average person going to be able to consume, and then they figure out like how to price their subscription. Well, now there's like a ton of more food that you could be eating at the buffet, and that food is extremely expensive. And you're almost taking it to other restaurants now, right? By taking your keys and going outside of the ecosystem. And so that's basically just kind of changing the way that all of these providers need to think about like how subscriptions work. So, I mean, I could speak even personally, right? I've got a Claude Max subscription that's $200 a month. But my token usage is in the hundreds of millions, right? And for every 1 million tokens of Claude is like $25. So let's say I'm at like 500 million tokens, 500 times 25, we're sitting at $12,500 that I would be spending on costs. Hopefully they don't kind of take away the auth token in that process. But yeah, that's kind of the issue that a lot of these providers are seeing. Yeah,
Wait,
and I think this also Yeah.
Ben, you're saying you're paying $200 per month, but you're spending about an equivalent of $12,500 per month in tokens. Like
I mean,
that's not a good.
so
Why like that's not a good subscription management of them, right? They should just
well,
cap their
yeah.
token spending.
So there is also the cost of spending. There's the cost if I were to go and use the API directly, and that's the cost that I'm quoting, right? Which is like $12,000.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
If I don't know what their costs are to run these APIs, it might be 90% of that, right? In which case, maybe $12,000 comes out to be like around $1,000, $1,200. I'm not sure what the margins are. But yeah, I mean, a lot of these, this is just like early phases of pricing things where it's all about just getting market share, and I'm sure they're running at a loss leader for a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, this is a really good chart too. Yeah, this is crazy. This is the first time I've seen something like this, but just the difference between how much one token or 1 million tokens used to cost with GPT-3 Da Vinci, which was kind of the first OpenAI model that was somewhat useful, even though GPT 3.5 was really the one where people, ChatGPT came out from it. But it was $60 for 1 million tokens back then. And now if we look all the way to Llama 4, which is an open source model, it's 6 cents. So basically, how much cheaper since 2020 token usage has gone down 850 times. 850 times, which I think also, yeah, I don't know if you guys have any other comments, but I wanted to even bring that to Moore's Law, which is towards the end of this slide or the pitch deck. Do you guys know about Moore's Law?
Yeah.
Are you familiar with that? Go one more. I think it should be maybe it got pushed.
Yeah, and it's not just the cost going down, but also the models getting better. It's they're inverse.
Yeah.
And yeah, you see it here on the charts. Since 2020, 2021 to now, it literally became more than 100 times cheaper, if not close to 1,000.
And
the
cheaper it gets, then also so it's getting cheaper and smarter. So the amount of use cases it can actually accomplish is increasing, and then the cost to actually do those use cases is going down. So the more that happens, the more it unlocks, and then the more it will unlock profitably as well.
Yeah, and architecture gets better and people figure out how to combine things. And then you have these feedback loops of AIs being able to finally talk to each other. And all of this combined just, it's not only an 850x token cost improvement, but I think also an 850x improvement in outputs. So that's incredible. Here is also all the frontier models, the pricing change basically on how back in Q1 2023, what was the price of OpenAI tokens of their frontier model, and then going down. Like the frontier models always get cheaper and cheaper. OpenAI originally it was $30 to pay for the frontier model for 1 million tokens. Now it's 50 cents. Anthropic from $15 to $1. Google from $7 to 0.07. They all have different strategies, but they have the same destination, and the destination is, I think, that token price goes basically to zero over the next year or so. Then we haven't even talked about the open source models that are coming very close to the capabilities of these frontier models of the major AI labs. And that's maybe another question to discuss here. If we are thinking about the ethics of using OpenAI or using Claude or Anthropic, with the thought of mass surveillance. But then we decide we don't want to use OpenAI because they're doing mass surveillance or they're checking on our data. So we move to open source models. But if we're not running them locally, but in the cloud, then all our data goes to China. So it's kind of a funny double-edged sword as well. Any thoughts on that?
I mean, like this partly ties into what I said before, is that like these open source models are most of the time being distilled based on the latest closed source models. So by making better closed source models, we are giving better distilling options to the open source models. I think the only way for people to actually counter what's happening with their data is the OpenClaw route, is having your user info, your data in your own environment, whether that's locally or on a VPS, and then switching out your model depending on which you would like to use. I think the open source models are going to be fantastic for the kind of low intelligence tasks that you want to automate that don't really need much thinking to do, because they're going to be they're basically free. And you don't need to use a super smart model to make basic calls and basic kind of daily tasks. And then the closed models, I personally would want to use the latest one, even if it costs more. And I just see that cost becoming less of an issue over time.
Mm-hmm.
Just like mobile internet data, it used to cost so much more for 1 gig of data on your mobile phone. And today most plans come unlimited.
Yeah, that chart was fascinating about also just looking at Google. Like Google is significantly cheaper than the other two options, right? And I'm so curious to know like what's happening in Google's like C-suite that they're really leaning into like cheaper models. Is it cheaper like is it cheaper for them to run? Is it the fact that they own the full stack, right? They own TPUs. So they actually own the hardware, whereas Anthropic and OpenAI, they don't own their own AI silicon, right? But or is it the fact that they're thinking, oh, well, if we want to embed this into literally every part of our ecosystem, whether it's the Google Workspace, and everything that comes along with that, like we need to make this super cheap. But to me, it's fascinating how like OpenAI and Anthropic are kind of more or less pricing things similarly, but then Google is just significantly cheaper. Ever since I think it was like Gemini 2.5 Flash, they've just gone down in price a lot.
But then thinking
they're
about
basically
the use
open
cases,
source price. Yeah.
Yeah. What would you use Gemini Flash for is the question. That's like these small, easy tasks like Luca mentions, right? It's like the tasks you want to use a cheap model. It's like, okay, either sorting stuff or doing quick research. But for complex tasks, I wouldn't opt for Google. And I think your thought process is correct, as in like embedding it in different places where you clearly have a small task that can be executed. Great. But also, are the Gemini models the actual frontier models of Google that they want to push, or are they doubling down on all the other use cases that are enabled by Gemini, so like a VO3, like a Nano Banana, because those are actually, like for Nano Banana, you pay 6 cents now per image, right? So that's the same price as 1 million tokens, and that's one image. That doesn't need 1 million tokens. That's maybe 25,000 tokens max. So I think they're pricing other things that they're good at and that they want to push at a fairer price, and indeed have their frontier model for specific use cases. And that comes back to each of those labs choosing their own use cases and their own focus points, where ChatGPT and OpenAI goes the consumer route, where Anthropic goes the developer route, and where Google goes the mass production and have everything in our ecosystem, and build all the tools that we can build to facilitate everyone who wants to do stuff on the internet. And then I think with the focus maybe on visual and deep research, I think is where Google probably excels.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love these charts just to see. And then we've also had the comparison page. Let me go to that, which I found interesting to see. Yeah, so Nick also spun up a OpenAI versus Anthropic. Let me zoom in here a little. Comparison, and here on this chart we see the valuations of OpenAI versus Anthropic, which basically is steadily on a 2x valuation. I think the latest rounds, this is not the latest, but that's the revenue. Yeah, the current valuations
year over year.
Yes. So OpenAI is always valued double of OpenAI. OpenAI is always valued double of Anthropic. But then if you look at the user base, Anthropic is nowhere near OpenAI user base. And that's what I find very fascinating.
But look at Gemini, this is, I was thinking about it the whole time, is like Gemini's user base is creeping up. And I think it's mainly because they're going for a free model, right? where I don't know anyone who actually pays for a Gemini subscription, but I know people who use Gemini. Like I use it personally, but I think the free subscription gives away most of its features anyway, no?
I'm paying for Gemini because I want to use VO3, for example, or I want to use some other parts of this suite. And then the Google subscriptions are generous because you pay.
Yeah, I just noticed I'm actually on Pro as well, and it's for the same reason. I wanted to use Nano Banana, right?
Exactly.
So like, yeah, I think Gemini are like sleeping giant in this game. Not much kind of drama happening around them, and just quietly taking up market share.
Exactly. This is actually a crazy stat. 4% of all the GitHub commits are now by Claude Code, and they're expected to be 20% at the end of the year of all GitHub commits are authored by Claude Code, which is an insane stat. If this is actually going to happen, incredible. This is like an insane rise and a full Anthropic takeover. Yeah, any closing thoughts on Anthropic and models raised to zero?
Yeah, like I think the most important, like most of the companies, at least what it seems like, is they were moving into creating applications, and I, for one, was one of those people that was automating my life using the application of either Claude or of ChatGPT, or switching between them. And I don't think that that's actually going to be the business case that wins, just because there's so many different models that are competing to build the same application, that to me it does feel like that application is going to leverage all of the different ones for their best kind of features, or at least that's my ideal scenario for how things go. Yeah, I mean, last week we discussed things like the perplexity computer, and these for me are all just attempts at creating an agentic play to capture that market. But I feel like people are actually quite aware of kind of what the best way to build that consumer application is, and it's not going to come from one of these big players. I think they are best positioned to be the infrastructure. Looking at the numbers, I'm really shocked actually at how small the market share of Claude is. It feels like they get a lot more press and attention, and they actually have traction, even though I'm such a big fan of their product and their actual model. I think the parts that behind them, of effective altruism, for me is a new perspective on their company, which I'm not sure I feel very comfortable about. And I actually think that Gemini are doing fantastic in the consumer market, better than I thought. So yeah.
Building on your point of if there's going to be an everything app, or like if one of those apps that are being created by the big labs are going to be the end game or the end state, do you think, like you're saying it won't, right, Luca? You're saying that
Today, from where I'm standing, because of the OpenClaw movement, I mean, that's now the most starred GitHub repo ever, as much as the language React. For me, that's a huge signal that that's not going to go back in a box. It's still something for the tinkerers because it's an open source project. But what it tells me is that the consumer product that wins is going to be a closed version of OpenClaw that allows you to plug into whichever model you want, customize it however you like, and you create your own offline or virtual private server that you get out of the box. I think what we're tasting with OpenClaw is basically the V0 of what that product looks like.
Yeah, I agree there, but I would also maybe disagree. Maybe I have a question to build on this point. Is there
that might actually be the killer device. Because, Jony Ive partnered with OpenAI to create some sort of killer AI device. I think that this is actually the killer device, is this kind of secure way to create your own OpenClaw. And, they would imagine they actually do that, right? Where the product by Jony Ive has OpenClaw pre-installed on it in some way. Wow, that would be amazing, right?
That's so interesting.
So, yeah.
I could see that being the case. Sorry.
Yeah, I agree. But I think OpenClaw is an interesting framework, and that's probably why it got so much, like it did open up a new world, and it showed people what is possible with AI agents, but also how are AI agents actually being built. And it's not more than a folder system with MD files. If you just look at it, right? It's not much more than that.
Yeah, but those MD files, right? If you had a better onboarding of the user, you can generate them more effectively, and like they can make a much better user experience to create those MD
But that
files.
already exists as well. You have Manus, for example, which has been around for a year now. I think it's part of Facebook or Meta now, which basically has a bunch of agents. Like it can spin up agents, go do the work, come back for you, execute stuff. Same with Claude Cowork. Same with, I guess, OpenAI might have something similar like this as well. Or maybe not yet, and that's why
the problem with those is that they're only plugged in to the closed source that created them, right?
Yeah, and that's where the example of open code, for example, comes up, where they actually created a plan where you can use any of the models, and it's similar to Claude Code, and you just plug in their plan, and you can use different models, open and closed source, I think. But
yeah,
if you think that OpenClaw framework or the OpenClaw way of working is gonna be the killer app, do you think there's place for apps like Lovable and Bold and the early vibe coding tools? If Claude gets much better, or if the models get so good that that the models actually can start designing good UIs, UX, which they are right now, do you think there's still space for those early movers that ran and grew so fast?
Yeah, I mean, Lovable is getting better as a product because the underlying models are improving. The average user of Lovable just thinks Lovable is becoming better, but most of the improvements in that product come from Anthropic. I'm a big user of Replete, which is similar and different to Lovable. But what I've realized is that I can, when I see how Ben works with his coding, from my perspective, you are basically building your own custom version of Replete that works how you want it to be used and with your own kind of systems thinking. But for someone like me, Replete works a lot better because it took a lot of the systems thinking out and kind of created that structure for me. But I can see a world where I might eventually move away from a Replete because I can create my own OpenClaw that behaves as I want it, you know. But yeah, I think those tools have quite a solid future in some sense. They're just beginning.
One thing that's not on point yet to run your OpenClaw fully locally, like you're saying, and you're having your data and everything safe, is that you need good hardware. And that device that you're describing, the Johnny Ive device, if that's gonna be an OpenClaw, like let's build on the idea, right? Let's speculate a bit. If they build a little device that can be used for running agents for yourself, the device is going to need a lot of compute power to run it locally, or it's going to go to the cloud. And there is a big difference in how long it takes to execute tasks if it's done locally or if it's been done in the cloud. And I think that's where we are still a little bit stuck.
It's kind of a combination of both too, right? It can have some weaker model that is doing the local tasks and then plugs into the cloud for image generation or a deep research.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. Oh, I love speculating, but that's also where we get to the MacBook Neo.
Hey Joni, hire me, man.
Yeah, exactly. But Apple announced the MacBook Neo, which is their cheapest MacBook as of yet, and I started thinking, would it be possible to start running OpenClaws on there? Maybe this is a better solution than buying a Mac Mini because I can actually see my files on this device, but it's probably not strong enough to run local models. So I'm like, this may be a perfect device for an OpenClaw type situation, but I still need to use cloud models. And then did some research, or let Nick do some research on what the time difference between running local models on the different devices that are out there now. As you can see, a Mac Mini, a Mac Studio, and then the time and how long it takes to actually execute a task. Right now, I would not invest in a Mac Studio that cost quite a lot of money to wait 46 seconds for a little task, while Gemini Flash can do it in 3 seconds. Like that's my main conclusion. I don't know if any of you want to give up some of that time to like invest in strong hardware to then wait longer versus still using the cloud. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like as tasks get longer and become more agentic, you are more likely to they will walk away from your computer or say, okay, I'll come back in 2 hours. And if it takes twice as long, it won't matter as much, right? So that's where I could see it. But it is interesting because like you think of tasks where you just click the enter button, you walk away and you come back. Like those tasks are almost better for the cloud, right? Because you don't have to keep your computer on as well. So for sure, the MacBook Neo, I don't think is like a good solution for that. Um, but yeah, it really is this trade-off between like sending all of your information to an ASIC, right? A specialized GPU in the cloud that's running this model in like a very, again, specialized way versus like on your computer. And I agree. I don't know. Everyone's running out and buying their Mac Studios or daisy chaining them together. I think Jake House said he bought like 10 of them, but it really just doesn't make sense from like a time perspective why you would, I don't run any of these models, let alone you
Yeah.
can't run any of the powerful ones, right? Because then you're stuck with like running these Chinese models that are probably 30% dumber than a Claude model.
And like if we look at the task that is written here, task write a 400-word section, which is basically 550 tokens on a MacBook Neo 8 gigabytes on a mobile chip, no model upgrades. But basically the task that we see here is write a 400-word section, which takes 550 tokens. That would take on a Mac Studio running Llama, or let's take a Mac Mini, the Qwen 32 billion parameters, for 34 seconds, while it would take Claude Sonnet in the cloud 7 seconds. Like, and this is just 400 words, let alone vibe coding an app. Try to vibe code something at that pace, you're waiting a whole day till you have a result. Like that, then you're gonna miss out on your dopamine kicks from seeing something happening right after you prompt it. So yeah, also I don't really see the results much of those people that are all running it locally. They are showing off their Mac Studios, but I think only if you have really systemized your life and you have it all on that one hardware device, that it makes sense, but not if you want to be productive and fast. Luca, what are you thinking? Have you invested in Mac Mini yet?
No, but I tried, like, I think a year ago or two, I had installed Stable Diffusion and generated some image on my MacBook, and it almost exploded. But everything freezes up. So basically, whenever I used to be running it, yeah, you can't go onto YouTube or your email or something like that. It just freezes up the whole laptop. So yeah, I can imagine you'd need a dedicated device. Still, I even wanted to do it myself, have a dedicated device. I think that just having that extra barrier of having to physically plug something in and is actually why I haven't been using any like local devices for my work, because spinning up a VPS is just a few clicks and it's so much more convenient.
And Ben, you were saying you're spending hundreds of millions of tokens per month, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How long would that take to spend 100 million tokens on a Mac Studio? If 550 tokens take 46 seconds, like you're running out of time. It's gonna be impossible.
Yeah, and also the tokens aren't equal, right? So like the token for Claude isn't the same as these Llama 3 models, right? Tokens are way more valuable and they're able to produce so much. This is a good one. So icon.com, this is interesting. I was with a friend like a month ago and he brought up the icon.com landing page. And if you could zoom in, Rick, we were looking at this together and I just could not believe how chaotic and ridiculous their landing pages, but that's on the left-hand side, right? And so background for you guys, they spent $12 million on their domain, which was icon.com. They were funded by Peter Thiel and OpenAI, and they were basically like an AI avatar type concept. Well, like someone yesterday found that their website is basically down. So it's presumed that they've gone bankrupt, that they're probably selling off the domain and they're kind of moving on from whatever this kind of concept was. And yeah, like to me, the writing was on the wall with this, where it seemed like it was totally mismanaged. Even by just going to the landing page, you can see that their direction was, they were being pulled in 10 different directions right there. And yeah, this is the stark contrast from Higgsfield, which has seen an insane growth in the last year. They went from $130 million to, I think it says $1.3 billion. and like their user base has gone from 15 million to 4.5 million videos generated per day. Yeah, and this says that they're on track to do $1 billion in ARR. So super interesting how on one side you've got an AI avatar. I think AI avatars really haven't kind of picked up the way that perhaps other AI video generation or picture generation models are, like Higgsfield, right?
Yeah, because AI avatars are one very specific use case, which can also be done with the AI video generation tools. So I think that's why the video generation tools are actually winning. And they get integrated throughout the whole stack as well. I'm talking to agencies who are saying, okay, my video creator needs Higgsfield, but does the rest need Higgsfield as well? So like, it be like Higgsfield became a name, and it can be used through different in a lot of different parts of the content creation cycle, where an AI avatar has a very limited space of actually usability. Yes, you can create a virtual influencer, or yes, you can create a virtual UGC creator, but what's another use case for an AI avatar?
The story here is that Icon was trying to build like the entire advertisement for you, right? The entire UGC type view, versus Higgsfield is letting the human be able to like narrate and prompt engineer their way into like a scene, right? That then you can plug in and edit into your existing video. And it seems like Higgsfield is just way more practical of a use case today, right?
On the other side, this
I
icon
mean,
landing page, which says plan, create, and run thousands of winning ads end to end, that's an idea I've been playing with as well. Like create an engine where you can create content and then host the ads or run the ads, analyze the ads, and double down on the winners. That's such an obvious business or SaaS solution that's very scattered around over different tools right now still. So the idea is good. I think the execution just wasn't. And there's probably someone well funded that's currently building this in a better way.
yeah, I think so. I
You think
think it
so?
could be because to me they're approaching the same problem. I just it just feels to me Higgsfield might have just had a better product team or more experienced founders. I mean, ex Snap people. So I think they had some very good like way of both the in terms of the product design, and even their marketing, at least from my perspective, has been very clean, very artistic. I actually interacted with Icon maybe a year ago, and after I subscribed because I was testing it out, I was added in a Slack channel, and it was really chaotic. So I think it might just be a case of same idea, different execution.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I go back to like Sora, right? Like Sora had so much hype, Sora 2, when that came out, and everyone said, "Oh wow, UGC is dead. All this stuff is, like AI video is going to be able to replace like human videos." But at the end of the day, I haven't seen a ton of really compelling AI UGC content. And to me, when I think about like Higgsfield versus Icon, at least my understanding, which might be flawed, is that Icon was way more UGC heavy, whereas Higgsfield is be able to replicate a scene, allow you to be able to like create like a movie trailer or like really cinema level content. Um, so it just seems like a little bit different than like the UGC path.
Yeah, I think they're very different products. And yeah, so you see that there's a lot of things that have to fall in place correctly to actually become $1 billion company. Icon tried it. They invested a lot in the domain, and they made wrong decisions, and they became chaos. And I think culture played a part here as well, while Higgsfield did the things right and found their place in the market and the tech stack, and now are being integrated in almost every agency and other places. And I love the Higgsfield UGC content as well. To be honest, like that stuff that shows up on my feed, it's people reacting to a video and then saying, "Okay, you can actually make this buy. Make a photo of yourself. Go to Higgsfield, upload this, generate 4 Nano Banana videos, and then use those 4 Nano Banana photos, and then use those 4 photos to turn into a clip." And Higgsfield just seamlessly does this. Yeah. What's this? Cluely is back. What's happening here? Cluely? Who wants to intro Cluely? I haven't
could do
heard
this
of those
one.
guys in a while.
Yeah. So Cluely last year, Roy is like one of the best at I'd say like the UGC content game, right? He's crushed it there. He started out as he got fired from or he got his contract with Amazon rescinded after it was leaked that he was using like a cheating app for his software engineering interview. Went from interview coder to then build Cluely, which was literally branded as the cheating app for everything. And then there was this report last year with TechCrunch where Roy said that the company was doing $7 million. I think that was in June of last year. Well, it turns out they were only doing, I think, like maybe 4 or 5 at that time. He's gotten a ton of backlash now. People are now, thinking that Cluely is bankrupt as well. So there's a lot of like FUD between, I'd say, icon.com and Cluely, where this huge hype cycle around like the capabilities of AI in all these different parts of the world are maybe, coming a little bit down. But what was interesting here is that then, Roy did respond and he said, yes, like I did. This is the only blatantly dishonest thing I've said publicly online. So this is my formal retraction, my B, TechCrunch Foid. Um, but we are profitable, by the way. And then he did respond like a few hours later with a screenshot, which isn't here, but a screenshot of like him asking Claude if it's securities fraud or wire fraud if you lie about your revenue numbers and say you're at 5 million instead of 7 million in revenue. And so he responds by saying, NGL, not gonna lie, I was sweating for a few minutes. So I don't know. I mean, like Cluely, actually, I've been following them pretty closely because their products are pretty similar to the ones that I'm building. And they have done a bunch of pivots, right? They went from the cheating app and they've like totally toned down that strategy and really they're kind of positioning themselves more as like a granola, if you know that, right? A note-taking app where you can put it on your own device. You don't have to like have this meeting assistant that joins in the call. But also I think it does feel like at least the last few weeks the people are coming a little bit more down to earth. And even Cluely, they were once offering like $500,000 a year salaries for their software engineers, and their postings online are like way more I'd say normal ranges for what a software engineer would make. So yeah, I'd say like the hype around Cluely has kind of died to an extent, and now they're I'd say they're back on Earth.
You gotta say he always manages to hit the algorithm somehow and to get back into the picture, and like Roy is a very interesting person in terms of like the marketing strategies, and he has the Gen Z way of getting the attention, and he knows how to use all of that to his advantage, which kudos to him. He got into the news again. That's all I have to say. I don't really know much more except for how they got funded very big time a while ago and were all over the feed, and people were jealous of that.
This is a good one. I added this, but why don't we go, if you could refresh your screen. I added or I asked Nick to add another slide about GPT-4 5.4, but we should just cover that. So refresh if you can, and it should be at the very end. There you go. Okay, so let me see. Sorry, I wanted to get. Sorry, can we wait a minute? I asked
sure,
Nick to add hang on. Sorry. We'll cut this out. But I asked Nick to like add a hook. So guys, we'll cut this out, but our best performing video was one where it was the 12 to 18 months. A lot of jobs will be replaced, white collar jobs will be replaced. And I found that what happened was I was just reading the hook, the first 2 to 3 sentences, and that performed really well. So I asked Nick to do this, but I just asked him to add a hook again. So he's gonna update this hopefully in a second. But I think it's worth just like giving this a test. I can read it, or if you guys wanted to read it, and then we go into it after.
Same for Luca's clip with the doom loop clip. He also reading the hook on the screen. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, so he just pushed this. So let's see. Oh, do you have Vercel?
So
I have Vercel.
Is OpenAI benchmark picking here? Benchmark maxing with the GPT 4.5? Because I've been seeing this circling around WhatsApp groups saying it's doing much better than all other models. And I'm like, yeah, sure. Want to see it in real life. I want to use this before I believe all those benchmarks. Here we go.
Okay, there you go.
Go ahead.
You want to read it?
Okay. No, you.
All right. So OpenAI, they just dropped a benchmark number that shouldn't really be possible from post-training alone. OS World actually went from 47% to 75% in a single release. That's actually above the human baseline. Something fundamental has changed with GPT 5.4. It's really interesting. I actually was digging into this today about like what's different with GPT 5.4 and the other two models that came before, right? So as a recap, GPT 5.3 was only a codex version, and then GPT 5.2 was like the normal model for everyday use that came before this. But as listening to other people who kind of dived into what makes GPT 5.4 better than the other ones is that it's basically combining a coding model with a normal one. And I think what they've really been doing is GPT 4.0 was the last model that was really had a breakthrough in the pre-training, right? So if we were to go, Rick, to the slide before, as a recap for people, right? There's two different basically sections of how to make an AI model better. It's the pre-training and then it's the post-training. We could think of pre-training as, you know, you're going to school, you're learning over time and before the exam, whereas post-training is coaching after school, right? It's like the RLHF, it's all of these like fine-tuning, but it's after that long window of running the model. And really, my understanding is that GPT 4.0 was the last real breakthrough when it came to pre-training. And then this model of GPT 5.4 is potentially the next one that had like that next level step of the pre-training data, pre-training subset, right? And so if we go back to GPT 5.4, these are just like the benchmarks. And again, it just came out in like the last day. But it is, higher than like the human baseline for this OS world, which is like a computer use test. And really that's what people are finding is like super impressive with GPT 5.4 is that it can crawl the internet and click around in almost human-like speeds, right? Because you guys, we've probably all tried ChatGPT agent mode before, and it looked awesome, but in practicality, it really wasn't because you would end up waiting for it to click, click, click. Well, there's like a video of how fast GPT 5.4 is able to click around, and it's basically able to click as fast as, you know, the normal human would be going around on the internet. So that's been like the big takeaway so far is, you know, it's really solid at coding, but like everyone is talking about the computer use aspect of it.
That's interesting because I haven't seen a model that moves anywhere close to a human being like when controlling a computer. Looking forward to see that.
Yeah, but then the question comes up again, like what benchmarks are being used? And yes, it might excel in one or two, but then have they picked the benchmarks that they excel in, and do they leave out the ones that they're actually less good than the existing models?
Fair enough, but I'm kind of excited about it because some of this work I need to do today is demanding that I impersonate real users entering websites to get certain data, right? And I think that people are becoming more sophisticated at blocking. So just knowing that the models are becoming better at the browsing is comforting to what I'm doing right now.
What do you think is the future of blocking? Because I've seen, I think it was Resend, you know, the Resend tool, right? Where you can use, it's probably the AI optimized email, I would call it. Like if you're vibe coding and you want to implement email stuff, use Resend. But then Resend was blocking the account access for OpenClaw. And I saw someone post about this on Twitter, and the CEO or founder of Recent then said, "Oh, sorry guys, yeah, of course we want to make it open for AIs to use." So then they unblocked the block, so now AIs can actually log in and use the tool. I think that's another interesting direction it's gonna take. Certain businesses have to make a decision: are we allowing AIs to enter our websites and to crawl our data or not? And yeah, like especially now, if the models get so good at crawling and extracting and clicking around, this is a question that will be brought up on current software that's out there. And then maybe this also comes back to open data and closed data. If we can go crawl any website that's actually closed data, it sort of becomes open data if the models are so good at crawling and at extracting. So anything on that?
I think the blocking is really a reflection of like spamming. Like previously, there were all of the bots were nefarious bots, right? There were just so many of them that were either trying to like DDoS you or trying to like extract information. But now we actually have like real bots that are benevolent, right? And that everyday consumers are starting to use. So I think this is probably going to get solved pretty soon. Like I would say later this year, I would think. But there needs to be a like an identification or like an auth process almost for bots that is similar to the way that like us humans, right? We can't go on like ChatGPT and do all these tasks without logging in, and that's really to prevent like nefarious acts, right? And similarly, we need to associate these bots with the human. And be able to like parse that through. So yeah, like Resend, they probably just didn't even know that, that this was like an issue until, and I think Resend is very developer friendly, so they'll make an adjustment, but a lot of other companies, they need to like really rethink like
there is an ideal solution for proving you're a human, and it's called WorldCoin. Sam Altman, you know that one?
Yeah.
Scan your eye and prove you're a human. So
yeah. I mean, honestly, Elon had this idea when it came to X, right? Which was really smart of bringing in the subscription model, because really, if you preventing bots, like I learned this, or I read this somewhere, that the CAPTCHA, the reason why it's there and having like requiring you to click the do it yes, I'm a human button, is not because computers are not capable of it, but it's expensive for the bots to use the compute to like be able to click those buttons and do it. So by it being expensive, it prevents people from even wanting to allocate resources towards that. I think similar to, sorry, that was a tangent, but I think similar to the whole X Twitter subscription model, if you have like money or a balance associated with that bot, right? And that bot gets maybe penalized if it's being used in like a negative way, that could be one way to solve it. But I think you're kind of on this, right, Rick? Like to me, crypto has its use cases, and one of it really could be for bot usage on the internet, or our digital twin being able to browse on the internet.
Yeah, and I think we touched on this last episode as well, with like the black market for existing accounts with history for authentication. That's a market that's opening up somehow, and that might enable this. It's interesting how the evolution in AI and AI models and technology in general opens up some different markets. The black market for accounts is one. What's the other one that just came to mind? Oh yeah, memory. Like if you see the stock price of SanDisk, you all know SanDisk, right? If you ever had a hard drive, or if you ever had an SSD, it's probably been SanDisk. It's like market leader there. But if you look at the stock price of SanDisk, how it performed over the last year, it's up 1,100%. Going from a low of $30 to 565. Yesterday it was at 600. That's a 20x in a year. And this is all on the back of AI, because AI needs memory, and people starting finally to realize what memory is worth, and what it's worth to have your memory locally as well. And it all makes sense afterwards. There's an easy one of like, oh, yeah, should have known. This is such a logical investment, or a logical company to invest in, that's going to grow on the back of evolution of AI and technology and everything that's happening. But these returns 20x from bottom to top in within a year. It's impressive. It's insane. What could be a next one? What could be a next winner? What we see moving.
I think Chamath has brought up on the All In Pod a couple times copper. It feels like all of these kind of things, right? It's an amazing conductive metal for a lot of these different use cases, whether it's like GPUs, right, being the big one. But yeah, if we look at even in the last year, what is it? In the last year, I think it's up 20 or 30%. Is that what we're showing here?
Yeah, it's 20% up in the last year. Year to date, it's flat.
Year to date, it's flat, but
it's at an all-time high. If you look at it, it's like it broke through its previous all-time high, and it's now basically in price discovery. Yeah, but copper is a metal. Those are metals, right? That's like in the basket of gold and silver, and then you have copper. That's like an obvious next one because that's needed for certain, for operations and for different things. But then the companies like SanDisk, comparing SanDisk to Adobe, for example, which is you would think Adobe nice. It's digital and people need design tools. No, people don't need it, or at least don't see the value in it. But they do see the value in actually memory. Just a little segue that we had there going into SanDisk.
It's Samsung should be up too.
Samsung, let's have a look at Samsung, because yeah, I've heard that Samsung is
big
actually
on RAM.
Yes, it wasn't like, didn't Elon mention this, that they are working with Samsung for
chips,
building
right?
out. Yeah, for building out chips, because oh wow, that's a straight line up there. Woof. Okay, so Samsung is up 250% in the past year. Also probably due to the chip manufacturing and providing their chips to labs all around the world, because the current chip manufacturers just cannot hold up with the demand.
Yeah, they're sold out, I think, till 2030 or something like that.
Yeah. Wow. Oof.
I'd say there's more to grow, maybe, but I don't know.
Yeah. I mean,
we should.
Is RAM use going to is going to continue to increase? Like the demand is going to continue to increase as the models gets more powerful, right? So,
yeah,
maybe
we should do a whole segment.
The moat around manufacturing RAM is probably smaller than it is around manufacturing chips because it's less complex.
Yeah, and there isn't many providers that are so top notch, right? What is it, TMCC and then NVIDIA? Are those in the same category, or are they different? Yeah. Yeah. Ben, you said something about segment. We should do.
No, next week I'm gonna add to the docket. We should do a segment on like value creation and where it's gonna be, because like as we're talking about this, it really makes you think like hardware, software, models, lovable, right? Like I don't know. I think we could probably figure out a really cool chart or way to visualize this, whether it's hardware or like the third party, the wrappers versus like the providers, because I don't know, I go back and forth, and to me it feels like hardware is a sure bet win at this point. Like there's been a lot of upside already, clearly, with Samsung and SanDisk, but I think there's way more to come, right, as well.
I'm totally behind this idea. We indeed let's figure out some segments for next episodes. One of those could be indeed the value creation and destruction.
Different jobs and industries are going to be disrupted. So maybe it's something we can go through next week and make some predictions on how we think the markets will be affected in the coming years.
Maybe the last one to close up on is, I see a lot of content about people saying how to use AI and how AI changed their life, or how AI is making them much more productive and much more better at doing the things they do. But then I'm sometimes wondering, like, are they just hyping up AI, or are they actually getting more productive? Because I don't know too many people that actually get more productive. I personally am one of those that gets stuck in the optimization loop. And I don't even think it makes me more productive. I much better click around a few more times and go back and forth than trying to continuously optimize my systems. So I want to throw this one to you guys. Is AI actually making you more productive, or is this a fake a fake haze that's actually keeping us blind for what's real productivity?
I don't know. I just I'm doing things that I would not be able to do without AI. I mean, it's basically created my own jobs. I mean, my full work now is me leveraging AI. I would not be able to operate my business without it. So yeah, I mean, definitely making me more efficient for sure. I mean, without a doubt.
Ben, you
Yeah,
too, right?
I mean, like, yeah. For sure, 100% way more efficient with AI. But I'm just noticing in like the SaaS world that it's also just incredibly more competitive, right? Even this year alone, when it comes to like quality of landing pages, the amount of blogs that our competitors are releasing, or like other like growth channels, right? To me, like where am I spending most of my time? You can build really amazing products and have like insanely good user experiences. You can analyze data way better than any data analyst I could hire would be doing that. Um, a lot of the things around like outreach it still feels like AI is just not great at outreach. So I find myself spending most of my time just communicating with other humans, because the AI can't really communicate as effectively as I'd want to with humans, whether it's hiring UGC creators, whether it's answering questions that my one employee has, or whether it's customer support aspects. Like there are certain areas of customer support that it'll get, but yeah, a lot of times it's not. So it's super competitive. It's made the industry more competitive, but there's still some ways to go. I think on your part, on that part of trying to optimize, like that's probably the biggest downfall that people get into the habit of, and I do too, where I used OpenClaw. I built this mission control, and I was like, no, but I want it to be perfect, and I want it to have this and that. Once you fall into that cycle where you're just trying to grab the next AI thing and then latch onto that, because that will give you a 10 or 20% leverage on others, like it's probably not worth the time investment of it.
Yeah.
The other thing is, like, for sure, I maybe we'll touch on it next week, but I've seen a lot of people on Twitter talk about Meta Ads Manager and how you can use OpenClaw for that. But dude, that is 100% for real. Meta Ads is totally changing now when it comes to being able to use things like OpenClaw, or even I think Manus has one, but you can test 25 different ad types with different verbiage and copy, and you're using Nano Banana for it. And then you're having OpenClaw look at the pixel, right, of all the different parts of the funnel, basically, of, did they create an account? Did they sign up for a trial? Did they make a purchase? Did they cancel? All of that is going through OpenClaw. And that's just one example where in the last month, I've seen like a ton of breakthroughs when it comes to like ads management.
Yeah, and that's the one use case that I think will be very disruptive for creative agencies as well, where like you suddenly have this automated testing layer, and you can pull analytics, and you can learn, and you can double down, all automated in an automated sense, and track it all, like you say, which a funnel had to be perfectly set up, and now it's a bot doing all this work for you. And yeah, you can replace a whole creative team plus managers with one OpenClaw manager or AI agent manager who has some analytical marketing skills, right? Which, yeah, that's gets back to the main topic of the last episode of replacing a whole company with AI. Yeah, just want to build on the last point and my question as well. What I realized yesterday, someone told me, I've been trying to implement this with Claude and doing that. And when he described it to me, it sounded like a pretty easy workflow. It's like just a content creation workflow. But many people, I think, who get started with AI, who see all the possibilities to do, they dive straight in, but they forget to actually make the plan, and they forget to first zoom out, figure out what's the whole system going to look like, and then describe exactly what needs to happen. Because if you leave it to AI, it's going to build something, but then if you go halfway, go and change and figure stuff out, it's going to break. I've made this mistake multiple times, like, for example, building Vibecode Fun. The first time I built it, took me 2 weeks to Vibecode it. Then it started completely bugging, and then the second version took me 48 hours. And it's similar to setting up these workflows or trying to systemize something that you're doing. You really need to have the big picture, figure out what are all the steps, how am I going to connect these different potentially tools or different steps or different agents, and then go build it. Don't just build something and try to fix it while going. Sometimes it works, but I think in more cases than not, and especially if you don't have much experience yet in building it, stuff is going to break and it's going to be a pain in the ass, and you want to start over again, and it's going to be wasted time. So it's always better to zoom out, have the big picture, and then dive deeper in. Okay, guys, this was a great episode. Thank you very much for all the knowledge shared here on this one. We went deep on some topics, and next one we'll have some more segments and some new segments, some new charts, and it's going to be great. Thank you very much, everyone. I am the greatest moderator out there, and I have the two best guests in the AI operator space, and I'm enjoying the God Mode podcast. See you later. Bye.
See you later. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Ciao. Love you, besties.
Ciao.